It's another episode of the Locked On Coyotes podcast. We're going to get to a couple different things on today's episode. Andrew Ladd has been placed on the IR. What does this mean for the Arizona Coyotes? Plus, on the opening day for training camp media day, Jakob Chychrun said a few things that might rattle some fans' thoughts. We're going to go ahead and talk about that on today's episode of Locked On Coyotes.
You're Locked On Coyotes, your daily podcast on the Arizona Coyotes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the show, everybody. I'm Robin Leonio. That's Carl Pavlik right over there, who was secretly dancing behind during the intro. We got a great show for you guys today. I want to thank everyone for making this show your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. I'm sorry. I had to say that, Carl.
I literally do that like almost every time. I'm surprised you're just now noticing.
No, I mean, there's a couple times in which I don't notice, but I've noticed it a couple times, but I never said anything. I'm just what? I feel like messing with you today.
I like the intro music. It's very fun. I enjoy it, and it's just kind of nice to rock out and prepare for a fun episode where we're talking about injuries and people not wanting to be in Arizona. So why not start with a dance?
I mean, why not? Pump yourself up the best way you can. But like I said, we got a great show for you guys today. The Arizona Coyotes has a couple news coming out. Let's start talking about Andrew Ladd, because Andrew Ladd did not pass his physical, and the Coyotes put him on the IR, and that has some very important implications for Arizona.
Yes, it does sound like this was an expected result. Ladd mentioned that he had been dealing with an injury for a while. It's something where I'm sure when the Coyotes acquired Andrew Ladd, we had talked about the fact that he may not even play for the team. He ended up playing most of a season, but still, there are injury concerns with this guy. I feel that because I am entering that age and I am not a professional athlete. I can only imagine the physical stress that gets on your body if you are.
Absolutely. And the interesting thing, I think the most important part about all this is kind of considering the fact that Andrew Ladd's trade to Arizona included a condition of an additional draft pick if he were not to play this upcoming season.
Yes. So this is definitely one of the, I think, more misunderstood things. I know I definitely didn't understand it for most of the first year, but the Coyotes get the additional pick if Andrew Ladd does not play any professional games in the upcoming season under his current contract, and also does not retire prior to the conclusion of the 2022-23 regular season. So he basically needs to stay on IR, but the Coyotes can't put him on long-term IR because that would put them under the salary cap floor, which does kind of open the Coyotes up for being able to acquire an additional bad contract. Let's say that.
Yeah, absolutely. That definitely does help a lot on that side, and kind of see, what they're gonna do with that, because there's still a lot of questions regarding this roster that we don't know about. And obviously Andrew Ladd didn't have that big of a role last year. I mean, he did play and he did have somewhat of a role, and and it also gives you the question of who's gonna now replace him on the roster. So there's a lot of moving parts too on that. It's going to be interesting to see what the Coyotes do with this.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to underscore. I imagine Andrew Ladd was a pretty good locker room leader.
Mm-hmm.
we weren't there. We're not in like the locker room between periods, so we don't know what's being said. But Andrew Ladd has been a like phenomenal player for many years on many teams. He is a bona fide leader. I'm sure he was a great guy to have in the room. Um, and that is definitely something that could be missed. Like the Coyotes are a very different team again this year, and I feel like they've lost like a lot of veteran presence. And Lad not being there is definitely part of that. And you do need people in the room to kind of keep the ship mentally going, because it's going to be another rough year.
Oh, it's gonna be another really rough year. No one expects the Coyotes to really make any surprising moves or any surprising splashes or anything. I think the only decision is who's going to finish last, them or the Blackhawks. That's literally the only question about it.
Yeah. Although I guess the Athletic put the Montreal Canadiens like just like below the Coyotes, I think, in their most recent like rankings of bad teams. That is to the start of their ranking of all teams. So there'll be plenty of teams racing to the bottom this year.
I
Uh,
mean, the Tank Hard for Bedard sweepstakes is strong.
yeah, yeah, it is. And it's understandable. And I imagine we're going to see a lot of moves that are a bit unseemly in a lot of purist eyes. And I think like Andrew Ladd going on IR versus long-term IR, so the Coyotes can stay like above the cap floor. That may be one of those moves, unless, like I said, they acquire like a contract to do it. Like that is kind of a salary cap manipulation, although one that's not really talked about as much as what the Tampa
Yeah.
Bay Lightning did.
Yeah, it's a different kind of salary cap manipulation. It's weaponizing your cap space. That's what they're
Yeah,
doing. They have all the space. Like, hey, we're going to use it to our advantage, and we're going to friggin' do it. Obviously, we're not going to pick up debt. We're not going to go back to the old era of picking up completely dead contracts, like you know, like the Pavel Datsuk, Marianne Hossa ones. I mean, those worked out at the time, but they're not doing it. They're not doing stuff like that now.
yeah,
Just doesn't work. It just doesn't make sense for them to do something like that anymore. Because they still need roster players, and they don't want to rush their prospects. So there you go.
yeah. I will say this definitely, like, before the, or at points during the off season, I know I've mentioned like, McBain or Smith or like one of those kind of players may start the season in the AHL. This definitely opens up a roster spot, at least in the beginning. And that is, going to be very beneficial for those younger players if they are indeed ready to make the NHL.
It does give me the question of whether or not they're going to give like a Dylan Gunther a couple games with the like a not it doesn't necessarily be the full keep him up, but a couple games, like a game or two, and be like, all right, let's see how you feel.
Yeah. I know one of the things we talked about last, preseason was like Bear is a juniors coach. He knows how important juniors, training camp is to make sure that the players like acclimated. I do think Dylan Gunther is like, he's going to go back to juniors, but there's not too much more he can learn. So yeah, keep him around, maybe even the full like, games available before you start burning that deal.
Yeah, like right before you can start the limit to where you're allowed to slide it again.
Yeah. Unless like the team is doing really bad, in which case get him out of there. Do not expose him to that locker room.
Oh, exactly, right? You don't want to do that, because that'd be a whole nother story.
Yeah.
But once again, Andrew Ladd placed on the IR after not passing his physical, which means that the Coyotes get an extra draft pick in 2023. and they will also be working with the different one less player and figuring out how they're gonna replace that. We're gonna talk more about that, as we know more information, and as things come up. But we do got some more to get to on this episode. We're gonna talk about Jakob Chychrun and some of the stuff he said on Media Day on Wednesday. I know some of you guys have probably already heard it, but we're gonna talk about it on this show in just a moment. But first, I'm gonna turn to Carl for a quick word.
So I have a message, and that's that betonline.net is your number one source for football betting information this season. You can find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game you can find. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sports wagering information with live betting and up to the minute scores for every sport out there. It's the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including Major League Baseball, MMA, boxing, and golf. You can head over to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts.
So let's get back here on Locked On Coyotes as we talk about various different things that happened this week as training camp officially opens for the Arizona Coyotes. Media Day was on Wednesday. We talked about a little bit about it on yesterday's episode, but we teased it also today. When it's going to be on today's episode, that Jakob Chychrun said a couple things during his press conference, and these comments lasted about half his press conference. I tried to take as much as I can, but I guess the best way to do it is just to go straight to what he said via actual audio versus actually me paraphrasing it. Right, Carl? What do you
Yeah,
think?
let's hear what he has to say, and then we will discuss it. The Jakob Chychrun saga is long, and we've gotten like hints at what's happened and how he feels. But let's hear it from the player himself.
Yep, here is Jakob Chychrun.
The way things kind of played out, I think last year the team had approached me a couple times, one before the season, one early on in the season, and we just had discussions on where I was at mentally and where the team was at, the trajectory of the team, and I think the team basically communicated to me, knowing the type of competitor and person I am, that they indicated if this rebuild was going to be something that was going to be hard or difficult on me, then I wanted to be in a different situation and get moved on, that they were going to be willing to do that and make that happen for me. And so there's a couple occasions where that we had those meetings, and I think throughout the start of last season, I had a lot of reflection time and some really, really emotional, hard reflections with my, loved ones and family, and we ultimately decided to take them up on that offer and try to get moved on to a better situation. Like we talked about at the end of last season, just, my desire to win in this league, and, careers are so short. The time flies by. I'm going into my 7th year here in Arizona, 7th year in the NHL, and, it's just crazy. I don't want to, these years to keep going by and, be 10, 12 years into the league and not had a real good chance or shot at not only the playoffs but winning a Stanley Cup. I mean, you ask anybody that plays the sport at the highest level, they're all going to tell you they play it to win. And that's really my mentality and where I'm at. And I think the team understands that. I think it's kind of a mutual position right now for me to get moved on to, a situation with a chance to win and a team that's, fighting for the Stanley Cup, and for them here to be able to get assets. And, I understand how rebuilds work, and I think it could be mutually beneficial. So
That's Jakob Chychrun talking about, what's transpired over this offseason. And it definitely seems, Carl, that it is that he is definitely in that mindset that he wants to move on from the Arizona Coyotes. He wants to be able to play for a team that he will have a chance to compete with.
Yeah. Uh, I also kind of want to point out it runs contrary to what Bill Armstrong told like fans and the media at the start of last season, where he kind of came out and said like Jakob Chychrun was the like untradeable piece, and now we learn that the team had approached him like early on with this kind of offer of like, hey, if you're not happy, we can ship you out. And that's a admirable position to like give a player, because you always want to make sure your players are happy,
Mm-hmm.
but that you don't need to say that like you have an untradeable piece and then like be like actively having conversations about trading him. That
Yeah,
to me feels like I said it on another podcast at the end of last season. Like Bill Armstrong's position on Jakob Chychrun has been one of his few slights as GM. And sure, it may make his bargaining position better for him to like be saying that Jakob Chychrun's untradeable, but I don't think it makes the position with fans better.
absolutely. And did you say untradeable or said untouchable? I think they said use
Yeah,
the word untouchable.
yeah.
But
Like
same context for the most part. And I get what you're saying. The fact that he said that last off season, and towards the beginning of the last season, he that's what we're finding out now. That Chychrun was approached with that information and that offer. Um, and and maybe that kind of played into the way he played too, because he's like, that's a lot of that's a thing to kind of emotionally put on somebody, right? Even like he's still young, like all he's ever known was the Arizona Coyotes, but you're giving him the chance, like, yeah, but like I like this team, but at the same time, like I want to compete. I want a chance to win a Stanley Cup. I just don't know if
yeah,
this team is going to do it for me. Like that's an emotional freaking like a lot emotional baggage right there.
yeah. And I will say like we're just hearing Jakob Chychrun's side of it, like, and he, like, him saying, like, they approached me with this conversation, like, that kind of, like, if one of my bosses approached me and, like, hey, we know you may not like it with the company for the next couple of years, and if you want to go someplace else, we could facilitate that. That says something different than I approached them and said, like, I want to be competitive. And, if a company said that to me, like, I would take them up on that offer. Like, I would be like, if you're coming to me saying this, like, okay, maybe you don't necessarily value me the same way. But we also don't know, like, if they did the same thing with Clayton Keller and he was just like, no, I want to stay, or Nick Schmaltz. We just like Chychrun's name showed up in the rumors early on, so we're just kind of dealing with the fact that the timeline started way earlier than I think anyone thought.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's unfortunate because obviously so many fans here in Arizona adore freaking Jacob Chychrun. Like he's done a lot for this team.
He was the de facto captain pick, like in the off season last year, like
Mhm.
before the Clayton Keller renaissance. Like Jakob Chychrun was the like presumed captain of the Arizona Coyotes.
Absolutely. Right? And a lot of people are talking it's like, "Oh yeah, like and even like and maybe it's because of the idea that Bill Armstrong ingrained into our heads the fact that he wasn't going to get moved, that he was untouchable. And because like, okay, we're getting the idea, but the team loves him so much and that he likes being here, um, that he's a captain. He's captain worthy.
Yeah. I mean, I will say this: if the Coyotes knew starting last pre preseason that Chicken was probably not going to be in their plans, I think they should have drafted a little bit differently, because I don't think they have the blue line to like fit their rebuild timeline. Like, what do
They
you
don't.
think?
They don't. I mean, like they've got good young defensemen, but none of them can kind of fill that role in my mind.
Yeah. Like, you really have to, like, be hoping that Victor Soderstrom is a hit, because other than that, I don't think the Coyotes have a top 2 defenseman in their stable or anyone even close to being that.
No, they don't. And that's the thing that they have to figure out, right? They have to figure out how they're going to take care of that. And I think it's interesting because they should have thought about it, right?
Yeah.
They should have thought this through. Um, but here we are.
Yeah. It does really feel like a situation where, the Coyotes better hope they get a good return from Jakob Chychrun, because I'm
Hmm.
not sure that, based on what he said, the relationship is tenable. I do think there's always like the chance that both sides could change. Like, it's happened before. Like, a player's like, yeah, they were shopping me, and the team was like, yeah, we were, but he had a good season. Things changed. We fixed our plans. That's what you want a good, responsive, front office to do. But I don't see that happening in this case. I'm not like, I'm not sure if there's going to be a team that like answers Bill Armstrong's call, but you know, you may have to take a loss. Like, I don't know what kind of impact this is going to have on the locker room, which we just talked about missing like key pieces.
We're talking about Jakob Chychrun and his request to be traded, and well, his decision to take upon the offer to be traded from the Arizona Coyotes. I guess is the way to put it. We're going to continue this conversation in just a moment. But first, I want to tease a little bit of things for you guys because this weekend we finally got some preseason action. Two quote home games for the Arizona Coyotes for preseason against the St. Louis Blues and Anaheim Ducks. The first game this weekend against the Blues is over in Wichita, Kansas, which is an interesting one. And then the second back here in Arizona, the only preseason game in Arizona, but not here in the Valley, in Tucson, home of the Tucson Roadrunners. We're going to talk about that and recap them as much as we can on the next episode, or the next episode of Locked On Coyotes. But let's get back to talking about Jakob Chychrun. So, Carl, now we know he wants to be traded and he wants to move on from Arizona. Um, and if you were Bill Armstrong, what steps are you going to be making now? Because the they obviously need to do something, right? You talked about defense that they need to take care of that, and then also got to keep in mind that you got to consider the return.
Yeah. Like, I honestly don't know what Bill Armstrong is going to do, because I don't know what teams are offering. Because, it feels like Ottawa is pushing hard, and they have been rumored to be on Chychrun for a while. And, with a story like this coming out and changing the landscape of Jakob Chychrun, like, I do kind of wonder if they do like a big final push at the end, because otherwise I think it's going to be like, this isn't going to happen until like midway through the season.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. There's going to be a lot of discussions that has to be made. Ottawa, yeah, you're right. They're the only team that's actually making a push, it seems like. But
Yeah.
the other question is, would Jakob Chychrun want to play for a team like Ottawa? Because he said he wants to win. He wants to try to win a Stanley Cup. And
Yeah. I mean, I don't have a lot of faith in what the Ottawa Senators did the offseason. You don't seem to either. So that will be interesting. I don't think he has. Does he have any kind of protection on his contract? I
no, I
don't
don't
have
think
any.
so. He's got one more year left and then I think after that, a no trade clause or no movement
Yeah.
clause does get put into effect.
So, the Coyotes could theoretically like ship him out. Not ideal for like building a reputation among players, because I do think the Coyotes need to maintain this kind of narrative that, hey, we're gonna treat you right if you come here. Like,
Right.
we're in a rebuild. It's a bad situation, but like what they did with Phil Castle, like that was kind of like a propaganda move as much as anything else aimed at the players. So I don't think they should like ship Chychrun out to a team he absolutely doesn't want to go for. But Jakob Chychrun is not the first player to have a preseason press conference where he says that he, requested a trade or agreed to a trade or anything like that. It's happened before, and
Hmm.
those players have stuck with the team for, 20 games
It
up
is
to the trade deadline, even the full season.
it is worth saying that too, because he was asked that, and obviously I didn't include it in the audiogram because that would have gone to like 4 minutes long or whatever. But he also asked about too, like, now what's your mentality? What's your mentality, and kind of knowing that you've requested this, you don't know what the timeline is, and he's just like, well, just go in and kind of just do business as usual, because that's kind of what my job is. I'm a hockey player, I just got to
Yeah.
do my job, and I mean that's the answer you're looking for, right? You want to make, because like, even though I said it might have affected him when this offer came in last season, might have seen a little bit of that. Like, now that he knows this isn't, like, knows his decision and knows what's going on, he can be like, all right, like the rest is out of my hands. I just need to play hockey.
Yeah. And also, like, it's no longer as much of a rumor. Like, he basically confirmed kind of the situation, and most of last season was speculation on it. And it
Right.
kept coming up because I'm sure, like, there was smoke, but, nothing ever happened. Like, it definitely seems like that is going to be more the case. But it should also be said that he is not going to start the season with the team. I don't think. I think he's still dealing with some residual
Yeah,
injuries.
he's still dealing with some injury stuff. He talked about that in his press conference too. He's feeling pretty good, but he's taking it day by day to see when he's ready to return back to the ice.
Yeah. So potentially starts the season with the team, potentially doesn't.
But we don't
That's
know.
fine. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh, since no GMs of professional hockey teams listen to this podcast, I will say that Jakob Chychrun's injuries, potential point of concern for like a player to build your blue line around, but you know, it's not like the Coyotes have better options right now, unless Victor Sostrom has a great season. Uh,
which he hasn't yet, unfortunately. But
yeah, he. I thought he did like better in the NHL than he seemed to play in the AHL, which happens, but I don't know. Like, I really don't know what the Coyotes' blue line is going to be. They better like that prospect better be a defenseman that the Coyotes are seeking, which, I mean, given the fact that we were also talking about them maybe getting a goalie prospect out of it, like, I just don't know. The draft makes less sense with this move or
yes,
this
I mean,
information.
the only thing you can think of is like, yeah, they drafted a defenseman in the first round, but that's like literally the last pick of the first round. You're just like, does it even? Well, like, not the
Yeah,
last pick, but like late enough in the first round where he's like, it is practically a second round pick. Is he is like, and we even heard from our one of our prospects experts too. Maverick Lamoureux isn't that great. Is he good? I mean, he was good enough to get drafted, right? But
yeah.
he's not he's not gonna freaking spark fire.
I mean, it is definitely I think, smart move to draft a player who you believe will be a consistent NHL defenseman, even if
And
they're like a third line. Uh,
And that's the
but
thing, is his his ceiling, like that's the reason why they drafted him, because his ceiling
Yeah.
might have been low, but his floor was high.
Yeah. I do think that they could have gotten players in the second round, though, who had a higher ceiling, and players who are defensemen too. Like, and you could have, attempted to build the team around that. Like, just, I think the biggest thing that stands out to me is how early this seemed to be happening and how the Coyotes seem to have not planned around losing Jakob Chychrun. Like,
They were so
if they
focused on their forwards that it was that we got it's weird because like you can't say we got blindsided by this because we've been rumoring it all this entire damn time.
Yeah, but the rumor always was like that Bill Armstrong was listening to offers. And maybe we were, and I was naive for believing that, but I do kind of think that like if like the plan started last off season to move out Jakob Chychrun, they like
And he hasn't moved yet.
yeah, that speaks to a failure of that plan. That speaks to a failure to like do anything to kind of move that forward because
It also speaks to potentially an overvaluation of Jakob Chychrun.
it does. Yeah,
He's good, yes, but the thing is, if no one has bitten in this long time, there's an overvaluation somewhere.
yeah,
You could try to make the argument that other teams are undervaluing him because he's playing for Arizona, and the fact that and whatever. But I don't know what it is. But it's very well seems like it's the former. There is a little
yeah,
bit of there's a little bit of overvaluation here, and the fact and because of that, maybe offers have been put on the table. But the thing is that it was nowhere even near what Bill Armstrong thought would be a good value. So we would just like, nah.
yeah. This was honestly probably one of the worst press conferences that Bill Armstrong could have because Jakob Chychrun set the record straight on what the situation was. I appreciate him doing it,
Hmm.
but it does seem to weaken the Coyotes' position from a bargaining standpoint. And
Their
I
bargaining
mean,
power has been reduced significantly.
yeah, and you know, I'm not going to blame Jakob Chychrun for producing that. That this should have happened already if that was really the plan. If it was going back to last offseason where they're approaching him about this, unless he is like saying something different than what the Coyotes believe happened, like something seems off.
Something does seem off. But we'll have to, get more info as we know it and talk about it as it comes up. But any final thoughts that you do want to share before we close things off?
This has become a much more interesting season drama wise. So look forward to that.
It gives us content to actually talk about rather than just like, oh, they lost again.
Yep. Chychrun Trade Watch 2022 begins now.
We will be on that watch all season long until it actually happens. But that's going to be it for today's episode of Locked On Coyotes. If you like what you heard, don't forget to leave a review, like, comment, subscribe. If you have yet to already, we're available everywhere you get your podcasts, including on YouTube. And of course, also on the 12 News app. Don't forget to interact with us on social media. We're on Facebook, facebook.com/Locked On Coyotes, on Instagram at Locked On Coyotes, and on Twitter at LO_Coyotes. I am personally at Robin_Leonio. Carl Pavlak is at Carl Pavlak FFH. Interact with us, ask a question you might have, we might answer right back, or on a future episode of the Locked On Coyotes podcast. Thanks again, everyone, for listening to today's episode. I hope you guys are staying safe out there. Hope you guys are staying healthy. And don't forget to howl on.